welcome back to another video. We are reading His Reasons. It's a Todoroki X Reader fanfiction by AshleyH713. Let's hope to get through chapters 7 and 8. I'm not doing more. I've realized that 2 chapters takes me long enough. Yeah. Let's begin. Chapter 7. Mari had just finished combing her hair when her phone quietly buzzed beside her. That was really odd. Not many people knew her number. Who could it possibly be? Holding her head from the oncoming headache, from the hangover she was having, Amari didn't recognize the number and picked it up, seeming suspicious. Hello? A long silence cut through the air before a male voice answered back, uncertain and quiet. Hi. Well, that didn't help in discovering who the person was. Turning her brow, Amari asked back, hi, who is this? Another silence appeared before the voice returned. It's me. She visibly facepalmed, knowing she wasn't going anywhere with this. And how do I know who me is? You've only said 3 words. I'm not a mind reader. The voice thought about this for a moment before finally understanding. Amari took a long sip of water from the cup next to her as he responded. It's Todoroki. At his name, Amari froze, visually coughing on the water she had just decided to drink from. How was that even possible? He didn't have her number. Todoroki, how did you get my number? He paused before answering back, his voice bringing a chill to her ear. You gave it to me? That didn't seem right. What? No, I didn't. When did I do that? Todoroki seemed just as confused, though. Last night, you took my phone and forcibly put your number in. Mari's eyes widened, trying to remember the events of last night, but only becoming blurry. What the hell happened that she didn't know about? Why had she acted like such a fool in front of Todoroki, of all people? Slamming her head on the desk, internally groaning, she decided not to tell him about her memory loss yet. This was already embarrassing. She had to ask him when they met up next time. Yeah, that would be better. Oh, sorry about that. So, what's up? She chuckled nervously, hoping to steer away from the conversation, his voice returning. What are you doing today? Glancing at the calendar, she visually shrugged. Not much. It's going to be a pretty boring day. I guess I'll go to the grocery store since I have nothing better to do. It seemed like he was nodding his head through the phone, understanding her words. Good. Amari seemed confused by his sentence. Good? You mean boring all day is good? Oh, being bored all day is good. He just spoke back, a smooth and straightforward tone in his voice. 5 p.m. at the train station. See you there. Hold on. What was he even talking about? His words made no sense. Amari stuttered into the phone, trying to figure out what he meant. Wait, hold on. What does that even mean? Before she could ask again, the line went dead, only for Amari to be utterly confused once more. Had he just invited her somewhere? That was kind of a weird way to go about it. Amari thought for a couple moments and didn't know what she was signing up for, but also knew she had to thank him for the bracelet, so she decided to get ready. Running to the train station, she spotted him over the many crowds of people. Usually she would be early, but he didn't really give her much time after that phone call. She silently wondered what would be so important that he would call her out on a weekend. Truly, she was curious. She put her hand up, signaling to him that she was here. Todoroki! He registered the sound and walked up to meet her. On closer inspection, he was wearing a black button-up shirt that was slightly open with a white shirt underneath and matching black pants. Amari didn't know why, but he looked kind of fancy. Once he caught up, she whistled, mocking him slightly. Wow! Are you going to some kind of fancy party after this? To which he just seemed confused. What? No, why would you ask that? Scanning down his outfit, she noticed herself getting a little nervous. You should have worn something fancy. She should have worn something fancy as well, rather than the plain sundress she had on. You just look. At her words, he leaned in closer, curious to hear her finish the sentence, although his face was now dangerously close. Look what? Feeling the heat rise in her cheeks, she knew she couldn't say he looked good. That would be so embarrassing. So instead, she played it off, changing the subject and glancing at her wrist. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Thanks for the bracelet. It's really pretty. That was so sweet of you. She flashed the bracelet that she hadn't taken off all day, and he just nodded his head. It was nothing. I just saw it on the way to your house. Amari smiled at... Okay, this... How do I get rid of this? Okay, it's gone. Amari smiled at that, playing with the band. Well, thank you. He nodded again, and she then realized that she should ask Todoroki about what happened last night. She hoped it wasn't anything bad. Touching her neck nervously, Amari spoke. I'm sorry about last night. I was probably a hot mess and everything. I wasn't expecting you to come visit. It was probably really bad. She waited for him to deny it, but instead he just replied, Yeah, it was. Falling to the floor in defeat, Amari turned away in utter defeat and embarrassment. I am so sorry. Then she realized she had to continue. So, I didn't do anything weird, right? This caused Todoroki to freeze, remembering the kiss and feeling his own cheek grow red with embarrassment. He supposed he had to talk about that or else things would be awkward between them. Amari noticed his reaction and immediately started to panic, trying to remember even the smallest details. Oh no, didn't I? Was it really that bad? Her words caught in his throat as Todoroki grew confused. Was she asking if the kiss was bad? Although it seemed like she really didn't know. Wait, you don't remember? Laughing silently, Amari looked defeated. Yeah, not really. Todoroki felt his world come crashing down around him. Truthfully, he was up all night thinking about their kiss, and she just forgot it. It seemed he was worried for nothing. There's a fly in my room. He leaned his face against the pole, somehow feeling utterly drained from her words. Amari's voice returned then. Todoroki, listen, whatever I did, I'm so sorry. I hope it wasn't that bad. Letting out a heavy sigh, the boy knew he had to brush it off, or else things would still be awkward. If she didn't remember it, then maybe it was best to forget it. It was nothing, really. Amari watched him for a moment before letting a relaxed laugh escape her throat, hitting his shoulder in relief. Oh, okay, good. You scared me for a moment there. So why are we here? You didn't really give me much information on the phone. Todoroki let the embarrassing topic go, turning back to his watch instead. It's a surprise. Let's go. She looked at him confused, but quickly realized she probably wasn't going to get an answer and shrugged. Okay. Then she just followed him to the mystery destination that was awaiting them. She let him walk her into town for about 20 minutes before they stopped in front of a small sign with gold cursive font across the front. It seemed to be some sort of restaurant. Todoroki walked to the door before opening it up and holding it out for her. We are here. Amari seemed confused, but went along with it, accepting the kind gesture before coming face to face with a brown-haired male waiter. Hello, miss. How may I help you? She opened her mouth only for Todoroki to step in front, speaking. Reservation for Todoroki. His eyes widened as the man seemed utterly shocked, recognizing the name. Oh, yes, of course. Right this way. It's not every day we get the son of the number 2 greatest hero in our little shop. It's an honor to serve you. I'll take you to your table. Todoroki didn't seem pleased by the man's excitement, and silently followed him to a small table in the back, with 2 chairs welcoming them. Here we are. Amari went to push out her chair only for Todoroki to whoosh in ahead of her and do it instead. Her now feeling a little awkward. Oh, thank you. Once he'd settled in, the waiter left. Amari realized it was safe to talk freely to him, feeling the need to ask many questions. Todoroki, what is all of this? Picking up the menu next to him, he answered, It's for you. Her cheeks couldn't help but flush at this, feeling even more freaked out and starting to ramble instead. What? You didn't have to do this. I mean, you even got a reservation and everything. I mean, why would you even want to in the first place? I mean, he thought for a moment before locking eyes with her, remembering her drunken crying on the floor of her room. You never got to celebrate your birthday, right? Amari's eyes widened at this. She almost couldn't believe the words that he was saying. You did this so I could celebrate my birthday? Nodding his head, Todoroki then cast his eyes away. I know I'm not your brother or your family, though. She stood silent for a moment, wondering why he would want to do something this grand for her. They literally hadn't known each other for that long. Then, trying to hold back a sob, she smiled before shaking her head at him. No, it's perfect. Perfect. It's the first time someone's actually done something like this for me. Todoroki felt his stomach lighten at her tear-lined smile, and knew he had made the right choice in booking this reservation. He may have gone behind his dad's back to do it, but it was worth it just to see her happy for once. He wanted to see that smile all the time. Breaking out of his thoughts, he pointed to the menu and spoke. Order whatever you want. Amari nodded her head excitedly, and they ate their dinner in peace, laughing and talking about the smallest things. Once dinner was over, Amari went to stand when he spoke. Not yet. Turning her brow up in confusion, she stopped when out of nowhere a dozen waiters entered the space, with one holding a small white cake and a sparkler sticking off the top of it. Her eyes widened as they placed the object in front of her, Amari now noticing the small pink swirls on top, and gasped. Todoroki! He seemed pleased with the design, pointing to the object. It's the flavor you had at the shop before. Is that correct? Amari looked down at the small cake and smiled happily, feeling those inconvenient tears prick at her eyes again. He really was the sweetest. I love it. Thank you. After dinner, they left the shop, now noticing it was getting rather dark. Amari looked towards the sky. That was amazing. I think it's the best birthday I've ever had. Todoroki then thought for a moment before pointing in another direction. It's not over. She looked at him confused, but followed him once again, wondering what else he could possibly want to show her. He had already done way more than enough. They walked for a short while before the two reached a small clearing, allowing Amari to see first. When she reached the top, Amari couldn't help but gasp at the sight before her. It was a large hill overlooking the city lights. They sparkled way past the horizon, meeting the sky that was a dark shade of both blue and purple. She had never seen anything like this before. Todoroki spoke before her, also admiring the view. Since you just moved here, I wanted to show you this. It's my favorite spot. Gazing at the scenery, she was utterly speechless. It's so beautiful. I never knew the sky could look like that. I've only ever watched it from a window. He assumed she must have meant a hospital window, which made him sadden, placing his hands in his pockets. I come here when I need to think. I thought you could use it also instead of being in your room. Amari looked down at this, seeming frustrated. I said something really stupid last night, didn't I? That's why you're doing all this. Flashing back to the kiss, he spoke. I don't know why, but I don't want you to keep everything to yourself. It worries me. Her face snapped back to him at that. Worried? Why? Shrugging his shoulders, Todoroki sighed. I don't understand it either. I just don't like it, so I decided to show you this. You don't have to use it. She thought for a moment before closing her eyes, feeling the breeze blow past her. I like it. I feel very relaxed here. It's a good spot. He felt somewhat at ease with that, placing his hands on the railing in front of him. I think so too. Amari smiled when another breeze blew by, chilling her to her core and shivering slightly. Looks like the warm weather is going away. She suddenly felt something covering her shoulders and touched the fabric, only to realize it was Todoroki's button-down shirt. Did he just cover her with that? Trying to take it off, Amari laughed. Hey, it's okay. It's not that cold. but as she was trying to lift it off, his hand stopped her. Amari couldn't help but feel the heat radiate off his palm. Take it. Amari froze at his before pulling her hand away from his, and warm was completely gone. Okay, if you're sure. He just nodded his head, and Amari couldn't help but stare at him. Just like back during opening ceremonies, he looked just as beautiful and mysterious. Who would have thought that they would be friends now? Definitely not her. Truly, she still didn't know anything about this boy. There seemed to be this wall around him at all times, forbidding anyone to enter. She had always wanted to ask him about his scar, but knew it probably wasn't a pleasant story, so she didn't bother. Amari knew more than anyone how terrible the past could be. Placing her hand on the railing, Amari's voice lowered, the tone coming out so slow so that only he could hear it. Hey, Todoroki, you are the first person that has ever stuck by me this long. Usually when they hear the whole "I'm gonna die" thing, they run for the hills. This means a lot. Thank you. Todoroki turned to her then, watching her blonde hair glimmer under the streetlights, and couldn't help but remember the night before when she touched his face and called him by his first name. He kind of wanted to hear it again. Coughing to hide the embarrassment, he spoke. You can call me by my first name. Amari's eyes widened at this, and Todoroki knew he had to clean up what he just said, ignoring the pink glowing in his cheeks. I mean, I call you by your first name, so you should just call me by mine. It would be easier. That is, if you want to. She thought about his reasoning, and honestly, he did have a point, although that didn't make her any less embarrassed. Yeah, I guess you're right. I did tell you my whole life story and everything. I guess that means we're pretty close now, huh? He agreed, and she nodded her head, taking in a huge breath of courage. I can try. Then she turned to him and stared into his two-tone eyes before speaking lowly and quiet. Shoto. At the sound of his name from her lips again, that familiar shiver grew up his spine, and at the same time, both their faces turned an unhealthy shade of red. It was too much. Turning away together, Amari tried to cover her up her nervous demeanor, placing a hand to her heart, which was now jumping out of her chest. On second thought, maybe not. Todoroki just coughed, trying to cover his own feelings, and agreed. Yeah, it's just too weird. Once they had calmed down, Amari turned back to him and shrugged. Baby steps, I guess, right? He agreed, and they both grew silent, Todoroki speaking first. It's getting late. I'll take you home. Amari understood and nodded her head, letting him lead her back down into town. Now trying to ignore the light thumping in her chest that wouldn't go away. Chapter 8. Deku walked into the training facility early Monday morning, eager to strengthen his quirk and his body. All Might had said that he had to keep his vessel engaged in order to handle One for All. Usually, he ran on the beach or trained at home, but today he decided to give one of the nearby training spaces a try. It seemed they had more equipment there to help him anyway. He walked through the doors with his bag at his side, slightly afraid of the professional atmosphere the area gave off. There seemed to be quite a few want-to-be heroes in training as well. Deku paused when a man at the desk called him over. Hello, young man. You looking to rent a room? The boy just nodded his head, still nervous. Yes, please. I'm from the UI Hero course, and they said I could use this place to train. His eyes seemed to perk up at that. Oh, another UA student? You're the second person that's come in here. The other is from the Hero course also. Deku seemed oddly interested at this. He didn't know another person used this space. Another UA student? The man nodded his head, jabbing his finger down the hallways. Yeah, they come in here every morning. I gotta say, That person is a monster. Go ahead and check it out if you'd like. We have viewing rooms on the second floor. He quietly thanked the man and knew it wasn't right to spy on other students, although the curiosity was certainly there. Who would be here every day, and so early in the morning at that? Feeling the itch of excitement, Deku found his feet moving on their own towards the second floor. There he found an assortment of windows that people could look into and watch the pros train from. He found the room the man was talking about, and told himself that he would just take a sneak peek, just to see what the guy was talking about. Well, that was until he saw who was actually inside. Deku's eyes widened as he saw her dodging between fake dummy robots, kicking them down one by one until there were none left. It was Amari. Once the bell rang, she looked up towards the time in the center and gritted her teeth, seeming unhappy with the result. When Deku glanced to it, though, he couldn't help but gasp. The timer had read 7 minutes. Had she really defeated all those enemies in 7 minutes? That was insane. He saw her wipe a bead of sweat from her forehead before pushing a button and having the robots reset. Was she going to do it again? Watching carefully, the buzzer rang and Amari was gone, dodging between the fake villains and using gold protective coating to punch through them. Her eyes, it seemed like they had no emotion to them, just pure and utter determination. At the last enemy, he saw Amari ball her fist in anger, only for a couple of small sparks to leak out of the side of her palm, causing him to stand in shock. That wasn't in Amari's quirk usually. The buzzer rang and she fell to her knees in exhaustion, causing Deku to gasp, already running to the rescue. She looked like she was about to pass out. Racing down the steps, he slammed the door open. "Amari-chan, are you okay?" She coughed a bit before realizing his presence. Her eyesight was blurry from the hits. Certainly not the best right now. "Midoriya, what are you doing here?" Deku quietly went to grab her arm, scared that she may have been hurt. "I came to train and I saw you collapse. Are you okay?" Putting her hand to her head, Amari whispered back, "What's the score?" Deku seemed confused by that. "Huh?" But Amari just lifted her head, staring at him with the same icy stare. "What was the score?" Finally registering the question, Deku turned to the scoreboard, reading it. 6 minutes. But that's not important right now. You need to rest. Amari ran the number through her head before punching the ground in frustration, already trying to stand back up. That's not good enough. Deku steadied her arms, but she seemed better, so he let go. "What are you talking about? 6 minutes to go through that course is insane." Although she didn't seem to feel the same way. "No, I need to be better than that. I'm going to go again." He could clearly see the exhaustion in her face and called her out for it. "Amari-chan, you're pushing yourself too hard. What would Kachan say?" At her brother's name, Amari chuckled. "He would say it's not good enough? That's why I'm going again." She started to walk towards the edge of the ring, only for Deku to throw his arms out, stopping her. This seemed like some sort of sibling rivalry. "Wait, Amari-chan, do you want to beat Kachan?" Looking down at her hands, Amari just sighed. "It's not about beating anyone. I'll never be acknowledged by him if I can't even do this. I'll be fine, Midoriya. I do this every day." Deku then realized just what the man at the front had actually meant when he said she was a monster. Did she really push herself this hard every morning? Recommended students truly were different. And then he realized something else from her last fight. The quirk she used at the end seemed vaguely familiar. It was almost like Kachan's quirk. Was it possible? "Amari-chan, do you also have Kachan's quirk?" At his words, he watched her freeze completely, laughing it off. "What are you talking about, Midoriya?" He opened his notebook and showed her the note he had taken during her training, reading it out loud. "Your quirk is gold matter, right? So how come at the end your palms started sparking? It's just like Kachan's quirk. You have it, don't you, Amari-chan?" Looking down at her palms, Deku could see that she was anxious. "Don't tell anyone, please." That proved it. She really did have Kachan's quirk as well. But why was she trying to hide it so desperately? "Why, I think it's amazing to have 2 quirks. You should use it." But she just shook her head, crushing her hands into fists and replying, "No, I can't use it anyways, so it doesn't matter. Just act like you didn't see anything, please." Deku was confused by this. But why? Amari just smiled bitterly at this, letting her hands fall to her sides. because that is a quirk of a bakugo, and I am not that. I can't use his quirk. Not yet. I haven't earned it yet. Deku listened to her statement, not completely following. What are you saying, Amari? You are a bakugo. It's your last name. She seemed to find this amusing, casting her eyes away. A name is something you have to be worthy of, something you earn. I'm not there. Not yet, anyways. He listened carefully before quietly realizing that's why she was so uncomfortable with everyone using her last name. She thought she didn't deserve it. That a name had to be earned. Did she really not think of herself as Kachan's sister? Then she turned back towards the scoreboard and pressed the button on the side, resetting everything. I don't expect you to understand, but I need to do this. I need to be stronger. I'm sorry. Deku's eyes widened as he watched the girl run forward, going through the course again, even though he could tell she was exhausted. He always thought it was strange for someone like Amari to be so highly rated, especially with how small she was. But looking now, there was no doubt about it. She was recommended for a reason. After training, Amari walked through the doors of the school, feeling slightly lonely at the fact that Todoroki didn't walk with her this morning. Although it couldn't be helped. She had to train. He seemed to understand that as well. She reached the door of her classroom and couldn't help but catch herself staring at the soft glimmer of the bracelet he had given her. It may have been embarrassing, but she hadn't taken the dang thing off since she got it. It was like some sort of security blanket for her. Amari didn't know why, but it made her feel calm. Smiling slightly at the memory of last night, she paused when a voice broke her out of her delusion. What the hell are you smiling like that, like an idiot for? Amari gasped and turned around to find none other than her brother staring at her, looking annoyed per usual. Oh, it's nothing. Sighing once, he threw his bag over his shoulder, pointing to the door. Get out of my damn way, I can't get inside, brat. She then realized that she was indeed in front of the door. Jumping away quickly, she muttered, Oh, sorry, Katsuki. He just pushed past her, then bumping her shoulder slightly and causing her to lose balance, all while scoffing. Annoying. Amari's eyes fell, but tried not to let it get the best of her, falling behind him and sitting down. She was thankful when Todoroki came in a couple moments later, turning to him. Good morning, Todoroki. Placing the bag on his desk, he nodded his head. How was training? Amari's eyes couldn't help but catch Deku's at that. He probably thought she was some sort of freak now. Oh, same old, same old. It seemed Midoriya caught me, though. He must think I'm a real weirdo. He sat down, finding amusement in his next words. Well, he's not completely off. Fake gasping at that, she slapped his shoulder, seeming appalled. Hey, I'm not that weird, okay? Well, maybe I am. But don't just go out and say it. Todoroki found her act funny and couldn't help but smile under his breath. Then, before he could respond, the teacher walked in to start class. After class, it was soon time for lunch. Amari grabbed her food and decided to sit at the table next to Deku, Ida, and his friends. She didn't want to barge in on them, but she also didn't want to sit completely alone. That's usually how it went. She paused when another plate touched the desk, and she turned to find Todoroki staring at her. Why don't you just join them? Glancing to the side, she laughed. Yeah, I'm not great with people. I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes I can get all nervous and end up saying the wrong thing, or just rambling completely. He sat down across from her, feeling slightly amused. I've noticed. Amari flushed at this, slamming her head on the table. Seems it's a miracle that you talked to me, even after I embarrassed myself multiple times. Picking up his chopstick, he just replied, It seems I'm just used to it by now. That didn't make her feel any better, though, glancing to Deku. Plus, Midoriya saw me seriously training this morning, and I don't want to make things awkward. I may have told him about why I don't call myself a bakugo. Todoroki's eyes widened at that. And what did he say? Amari just sighed. He didn't say anything, which is why I think I scared him. I shouldn't have done that. Now I'll never be able to talk to him normally. As if on cue, a voice echoed behind her, causing her to jump. Amari-chan? Dropping her chopsticks in her soup, Amari turned to find Deku looking rather anxious. Midoriya, what's up? He thought for a couple minutes before aggressively bowing in front of her, catching the eye of a couple students. I'm sorry for reacting the way I did this morning. I guess I was just worried about you, and Amari froze for a moment before smiling back. Don't worry, I'm completely fine. I do that kind of stuff all the time, so it's not a big deal. although Deku didn't seem convinced. "All right, if you say so." She just nodded her head, and Deku changed the subject quickly. "So are you ready for that written test next week?" Thankful for the change of subject, she shrugged. "I sure hope so. It seems Mr. Aizawa doesn't play around." Just then another voice entered the conversation, watching Ida slide down towards them. "Bakugo doesn't have to worry at all. I'm sure. She was top recommended for a reason." At the sound of her last name, Amari grimaced. "Yeah, I don't know about that." Suddenly another voice entered the space, and it was one that made her hair stand on edge. "Top recommended? I think that's still gotta be some kind of joke." Everyone turned to find Bakugo staring at them, a tray of food in his hand. He must have heard the conversation. Todoroki couldn't notice the hold on her chopstick tightened as Ida replied. "What are you talking about, Bakugo? She was chosen by the best of the best. Of course, Bakugo-chan would excel in all subjects and matters. It's common sense." But Bakugo just found his words funny, remembering how weak she was as a child. Back then, he never would have expected her to get this far. There had to be something behind it. "So what? Did you get your fancy foreign teachers to bribe someone so you could go here? Saying that this little weakling is top recommended is impossible. She had to cheat somewhere." Narrowing her eyes, Amari spoke back. "I got in fair and square." Bakugo could only scoff at that, slamming his hand on the table. "Bullshit, there's no way. You shouldn't even be here, never mind in the top 2. So what underhanded tactic did you use then?" Deku listened to Kachan's words and couldn't help but feel an untouched anger in his stomach. He didn't know anything. If Bakugo knew how far she pushed herself this morning, then he wouldn't be saying these things. Standing out of his seat, Deku locked eyes with his childhood friend, wanting to set the record straight. "That's not true, Kachan. Amari-chan does belong here. You have no idea how hard she works. Just this morning she..." Suddenly, before he could finish his sentence, Amari bolted up out of her seat, shouting to cover his words, "Midoriya!" Everyone froze then, not really sure what was happening. Amari just glanced at him and shook her head before sighing. "I just remembered I have to study for that test. Thanks for reminding me, Ida-kun." Then, without another word, she picked up her tray and left the cafeteria alone, Todoroki watching her movements carefully. It was obvious she didn't want Bakugo to know how hard she was working to stay on the same playing field. Deku let his head fall after she was gone, knowing he had misstepped. She seemed very upset about the whole thing, especially in front of Kachan. Bakugo himself just looked confused. What the hell was that about? Deku shook his head, dropping the conversation. "It's nothing, Kachan. You just really shouldn't say those things to her. Amari-chan will be hurt by them." Bakugo looked in the direction she went and nodded, knowing that's exactly what he was trying to do. "Good, then maybe she'll finally go back to America like she should have done in the first place." The truth was, if he drove her away from UA, then maybe he wouldn't have to feel so guilty anymore. Maybe those terrible nightmares would stop. She needed to realize that being here was pointless. All she was going the very idea brought an uneasiness to his stomach. He felt eyes on him then and turned only to find that strange, silent boy staring at him again. "What the hell do you want now, bastard?" Narrowing his eyes, Todoroki just glared, picking up his own chopsticks again. Truly, he wanted to put Amari's brother in his place, but also knew that he didn't want to hurt her. She loved her brother too much for that. Nothing. Bakugo's temper started to flare up at that when suddenly a loud bell rang above them, causing the students to block their ears. The walls started to shut down on themselves and a loud voice echoed throughout the halls. "This is an emergency evacuation. The barrier has been broken. I repeat, the barrier has been broken. Please proceed to the safe zones immediately." Everyone immediately began to panic, standing and racing towards the exit all at once. "It's the villains! They are attacking!" The scream started as Deku's eyes hollowed. No way. His friend stood after that, moving towards the door quickly, when Bakugo stopped dead in his tracks, realizing something that made his stomach drop. "Wait, where's that brat?" Looking around frantically, she was nowhere in the cafeteria, and the painful truth crashed down on him all at once. She was going to the library, which meant she was outside. Deku touched his shoulder, his voice sounding rather far away. "Come on, Kacchan, we gotta go." Bakugo had other things on his mind, and without thinking, found himself running towards the opposite direction of the safe zone. Towards her. "Shut up!" His friends gasped, calling after him. "Bakugo, what are you doing? You're gonna get yourself killed." Deku touched his arm only for Bakugo to straight up punch him in the face. His anger flared up by the second. "Shut up! That brat is still out there!" Ida seemed confused, placing a hand out in front of him. "If you go out there, it'll only make things worse. It's safer to just follow the protocol and..." Yet Bakugo wasn't having any of it, feeling his breath intake faster and faster. "Screw the protocol! I'm going back!" Deku groaned as a nearby teacher grabbed the boy, pulling him away from the danger. But he wasn't pleased. He couldn't only think about their... He could only think about their last conversation. Oh god, he yelled at her and pushed her away so that she could be safe. Now she could die. His heartbeat hammered in his head as Bakugo couldn't help but think the worst. "Get your hands off of me, you bastard. She's still out there." Fear crept up in his throat as he let off an explosion, the teacher forcing him to let go. "Hold on. Hey, hold on. It's not safe to go back. I'm sure she'll be fine. You are just going to cause more trouble." But Bakugo wasn't hearing it, feeling his veins pop out of his skin. "Shut up! Like I'm going to let my idiot sister die." Todoroki couldn't help but seem shocked by that. That was the first time he had ever openly called Amari his sister. Perhaps he did really care for her deep down. He himself had his own worries, but they were much more subdued than Bakugo's were. Todoroki knew Amari could fight if she had to. Bakugo was just blinded by his worry to see that. Amari sighed to herself as she walked towards the library, knowing she probably made a scene in the cafeteria. Although she then realized that her brother was somehow right, it probably did seem strange that she would be so highly rated, given her past. She was about halfway to the library when a loud bell erupted her thoughts, all the windows next to her shutting down one by one. "This is an emergency evacuation. The barrier has been broken. I repeat, the barrier has been broken. Please proceed to the safety zones immediately." Amari's eyes widened, realizing what was going on. Could it be that a villain was attacking UA right now? She better find her way inside then. Quickly walking towards the door, she froze when a sharp, prickly and uncomfortable feeling hit the back of her head. It felt like someone was blowing thorns on it. Amari stopped her steps and turned around only to find no one was there. Well, that was odd. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she thought she noticed a sort of purple mist zooming across the ground and around the corner, but when she blinked again, it was gone. A pull in the back of her mind told her to follow the weird occurrence, and she decided to listen to it, as if she didn't have a choice in the matter. Her steps led her around the corner where she swore she saw that mist again, crawling into the building itself. That chill returned and Amari put her hands across herself, feeling the need to be comforted. She didn't like the air here. The prickling started again, this time stronger than the first time, so much so that it brought a small pain to her neck. "Who are you? I know you're here." Suddenly a voice echoed back in her ear. His voice crawled up her spine, stunning her into absolute silence. She couldn't make out the words he was saying, but they made her feel sick and uncomfortable, with the strong pull to obey them somehow. What the heck was this? Her mind started to become cloudy as she felt her consciousness drift away, completely in bliss with the sound of the man's voice. Now, instead of it being uncomfortable, it was warm and suffocating, forcing her to agree. She wanted to follow him, to serve him. A loud noise behind her shook Amari out of her trance, placing a hand to her temple in a strong headache. What the hell was that just now? Footsteps started to echo behind her, and Amari raised her fist, ready to attack this mysterious villain. A hand touched her shoulder, and Amari turned around, fist aimed for their face. When something unexpected happened, they screamed, "Ah, don't hurt me!" Falling to the floor in a thud, Amari adjusted her eyes, only to find a reporter below her. "Watch where you're swinging that thing, will ya?" Blinking in surprise, she answered, "Who are you?" The reporter stood up then, putting his hand out in defiance. "I'm not gonna happen. Of the Herald News Station. We are here to report All Might's becoming a teacher at UA." Amari took in his words before sighing in relief, so it wasn't a villain after all. "Oh, I see." Just then the reporter got a little too close, touching her shoulder carefully. Right, so can you tell me anything about All Might? Since you go to school here and everything. Amari started to feel uncomfortable when a hand pushed him away, seeming annoyed. Please leave our students alone. She looked up only to find Aizawa behind her. The reporter stuttered and bowed, now afraid of the teachers. Right, so sorry. It won't happen again. He then ran away before the teacher could catch him. When he was gone, Aizawa looked less than pleased with her. Bakugo, you were instructed to make your way to the safe zone. What are you doing way out here? Mari looked around her before bowing. I'm sorry, Mr. Aizawa. I thought I saw something But he just cut her off. That's even more reason not to chase it. If this was a real emergency, who knows what could have happened. She nodded her head sadly, causing him to sigh. Well, as long as you know now I'll escort you back to the rest of the students. They must be worried. Amari agreed and followed Aizawa back, still wondering just what had happened back there. Was it really just the reporters that caused the barrier to break? She wasn't sure. Walking back to class, she saw her friends in the far distance, waving a hand to greet them behind Aizawa. When they noticed her, they all gasped, racing forward in a suffocating hug. Amari-chan, thank goodness you're okay. Amari tried to break free, laughing at the action. Hey, it's okay. It's only a false alarm anyways. No big deal. She then caught Todoroki's eye, who breathed out a sigh of relief he didn't know he had been holding. Glad to have you back. Amari smiled, only for a loud and angry shout to enter the space. He seemed super pissed. Hey, brat! She turned only to find Bakugo stomping up to her. She tried to play it off, laughing slightly. Oh, hey, Katsuki. Just then, his arms wrapped around hers and pulled her away from her friends, all while she protested. Katsuki, what are you? She paused when she turned the corner, him slamming her against the back of the wall and shouting. Where the hell were you? Amari closed her eyes at his breath was far too close to her face and replied, the library. That's what I told you before. Although he didn't seem to like that response, slamming his fist in the plaster next to her head and making a dent. That's no excuse. You are always so damn reckless. Do you want to die? At his words, her eyes fell, thinking back to the pills in her pocket. Not really, no. Shouting in her face, he replied, Then stop doing stupid-ass things, you brat. Mari felt a tick of annoyance at that. She didn't like how he was making her seem so weak. I think you're overreacting, Katsuki. I'm not like how I was before. I can fight now. Although Bakugo didn't seem won over. All you're doing is getting yourself fucking killed, attending UA, going off by yourself, pretending you can fight. This isn't a goddamn joke, Amari. When will you realize that? Her eyes widened at the sound of her name from his lips. Even if it was in anger, that was the first time he ever called her by her name. Although the bliss didn't last long, as she realized she was pissed at him. He didn't understand anything, and it was ticking her off. What? When have I ever said this was a joke, Katsuki? I'm not just playing around like you think. Maybe I want to be a hero too. Did you ever think about that? Katsuki only scoffed at that. No, I haven't, because it's a fucking joke. You can't be a hero, you'll never be one, so stop acting so delusional already. It's pissing me off. Amari just grew silent at that. Katsuki watched her eyes turn dark and serious. This had gone beyond anger. Now she was furious. You watch me, Katsuki. I don't care what you say. I'll be a hero. Just you wait. Katsuki stared at her for a minute before taking his hands off of the wall and scoffing at her declaration. Good luck with that, brat. I can't wait until you fall so I can show you just how pathetic and useless you've always been. You'll never be a hero. Her eyes narrowed as she just hissed with absolute intent. Watch me. Katsuki shook his head then. Obviously, she was too stubborn to know she was in over her head. Maybe he should just let her be killed by a villain. Saving her from this was becoming too much work. Then he just turned around, walking away from his sister before muttering, Do what you want, I don't care anymore. If she wanted to get herself killed, then he needed to stop worrying about her. She had decided her own fate. Yeah, okay. Check her out. She's a good writer. Getting tired already. I will put the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Bye.